So good evening and welcome to the Bigelow Library's Finding Easy Walks Wherever You Are with Marjorie Turner. So before we get started, I just want to say thank you and also let you know that there are a couple of different upcoming things happening at the Bigelow. If you discovered this one from our website and our calendar, then you probably know some of the other ones that we've got coming up. On April 7th, for those of you who have been involved in our series of armchair travels, Marjorie's program tonight fits in perfectly. But we're having a whole series, a 5-part series with Steve Farah that we're calling Armchair Travels. And Steve walks us through, literally, the national parks around the United States. We started with a whole intro about the national parks, and then back on March 24th, we did the national parks in Massachusetts, which I'm sure maybe Marjorie will be speaking of, and Catherine will be speaking a little bit about those as well too. But we have on April 7th, Steve's going to be doing exploring the Colorado Plateau National Park. So if you haven't already signed up, go to the Bigelow Library's, go into our calendar and sign up for that. On April 15th, we're doing a whole series of things about which we're calling the Taste of Ayurveda. For those of you who are familiar with Ayurvedic medicine and healing, we have Claire Ragazzino, who's coming in to do a whole series on Ayurvedic medicine. And so if you're interested in any of that, sign up on April 15th and then sign up for our upcoming parts of that as well too. And then on April 21st, we have another one of the armchair travels with Steve Farah. This time we're going to be exploring the Rocky Mountain National Park. So please feel free to sign up for that one as well too. And then I'm very pleased about this. For those of you who did not know, April is not only National Poetry Month, but it's also National Financial Awareness Month. And on April 28th, we have Elizabeth Willard Thames coming in, also known as Mrs. Frugalwoods, who has appeared on PBS, NPR, in the New York Times, in Forbes magazine, on the Today Show, and she will be talking to us about how to achieve financial independence through simple living. I'm really looking forward to meeting up with Mrs. Frugalwoods. I'm a huge fan of her blog site, a young lady who's done some marvelous things. So check out the Bigelow's website and sign up for anything that you think looks interesting for you. Like I mentioned before, we're going to be recording this, and the way that we're going to format this is I will be monitoring the chat line during the discussion. If there's any questions that you have or any statements that you want to make to Marjorie, please put your comments and questions in the chat. I'll interrupt Marjorie during the presentation with some of the ones that seem most interesting, and then later at the end of the presentation, Marjorie will be doing a question and answer. We also are very pleased to have Catherine Parrott here tonight too. She's from DCR, and she will be talking to us about some of the wonderful ways to get outside around Massachusetts. Also keep in mind that the Bigelow has what we call the Trustees Go Pass and the Massachusetts Parks Pass too, which you can get from the library and get to some of these locations or other locations around Massachusetts where you can explore and find out some wonderful things. So since Marjorie knows more about herself than I do, Marjorie, why don't you introduce yourself and explain a little bit about how you thought about writing this wonderful book, which you guys are going to see upside down, which we have in the library, called Finding Easy Walks Wherever You Are, Marjorie Turner Hollman. So check this out. Go ahead, Marjorie.
Oh, thank you so much for making me so welcome, for inviting me. It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to have Catherine here at my back. So she's just an amazing resource that you have right in the area, the Wachusett area. So I have written 4 Easy Walks books now. It's a little stunning to think about. And I started writing them when I recognized that there was a need in our own area where I live in Bellingham, Massachusetts. I write for a local paper, and I wrote just a series of newspaper articles on what my editor called Naturally New England. And I didn't have any place, after you've read a newspaper, it's gone. I didn't have any place to keep those articles, and I felt like there was some value there. So I put them up on my website. After the 500th time, somebody came to my website saying, "Where's Joe's Rock?" Well, it's in Rentham and it's got a view. And I said, I think there's a need there. And my editor said, "Do you really think there's enough trails out there?" And I said, "I think there might be." And 3 trail guides later, and the Finding Easy Walks Wherever You Are, which describes how we find these trails wherever we have traveled across the country, to Canada, to Ireland, we have found easy walks. I will explain in a few minutes what I mean by easy walks. The backstory of why I always do easy walks as opposed to being a real hiker is that nearly 30 years ago, I found myself in a hospital bed, totally paralyzed on my right side. Walking is a precious, precious gift to me. I have been able to heal to a substantial amount, but when I go on trails, I use hiking poles to help maintain my balance. I do not take walking for granted, and I do only do easy walks, but I love to get outdoors. It's where my heart sings. And I hope I can share a few places that might be right around the corner from where you live that you'll be able to say, I could do that. So let's get started. And let's see. I'm not sure that I did that right. I need to share the screen. There we go. Here we go. Yes? Can we see that? Excellent. So we're finding easy walks wherever you are. And I'm going to talk a little about some of the things you really should take on your next walk. And thank you again so much for Melissa and the Bigelow Library for making me welcome. So let's get started. I love to show this picture because people a lot of times think of easy walks as, well, it's just, under 4 miles, it must be easy. And because of the paralysis that I still live with, I pay a lot of attention to trail surfaces. And when I see a trail surface like this, this is not an easy walk. It is not a nice walk at all right there. When I talk about easy walks, I've learned to describe it as not too many roots, not too many rocks, relatively level. It doesn't have to be pancake flat, with something of interest along the way. That's what makes an easy walk in my book. And now I'm going to start sharing a few of the places that are right around the corner from where you live, I presume. This is the Wachusett Walkway, and I understand that it's open only occasionally. Can you explain to us, Catherine, when this walkway is open for the public to be able to get these grand views of what the reservoir?
Yes, so it's open on when we're not in a pandemic, and we missed it. It's open on Mother's Day weekend and then Columbus Day weekend. So one of the weekend days for about 5 hours at a time. So I know it's not much. Yeah, that's it. And so it gets pretty crowded with people taking a chance to get the opportunity to be on there. Yeah. But that's it for now.
Oh boy, but there are places right outside of where the gate is that you can still see. Yes. I've seen people park along the road there.
Yep, you can go right up to the edge of it. All and right. If you are able to go down the steps, if you see on the...
Yeah, I'll show the next picture.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's people coming down those steps to get down below the dam. Didn't you tell me that they're closing that area starting tomorrow?
Yes. So
for construction?
Yeah. So I would like everyone to know that they are doing improvements on the pavement down below. So that as we're looking at it, the right side is going to be closed, but you can get in through the other side, which we call Gate 42 from Grove Street.
Okay. And what I observed from being in that area, that the biggest challenge is that there's little legal parking. So I think that they don't often open those gates to allow people down closer to the dam. I don't know that that happens except on exceptions.
Right.
Okay. But it's, as you can see, a gorgeous view. And thank you again for letting me borrow your pictures to be able to share that today. So we also have Stillwater Farm in Sterling, which is a neighboring town to Clinton. And there's a DCR interpretive trail there. And I saw a little, I have not been to Stillwater Farm, Catherine. Is there something that you can tell us about this area and what that interpretive trail offers?
Sure. So there's an old farmhouse that sometimes is open for interpretive programs. Hopefully we'll get back to that soon. But behind it are old farm fields and a hill. So the trail is very narrow, and it does go uphill in back of the farm. There's two choices. There's a 1 mile loop, or you can cut across and take a half mile. So the last time I walked just the half mile, we saw deer prints, rabbits, owl pellets, hawks. So it's full of wildlife there. You don't have to do the full 1 mile walk.
Great. And there's no charge to visit?
That's free parking.
Great. All right. So that's in Sterling. And I like to, when I do these presentations, to remind people that most of us have town commons, as they're kind of common throughout New England. And they offer an inviting place to walk and learn about your local history. And this is my own, where I live in Bellingham. That's the horse watering trough. We don't have a lot of horses going down Main Street in Bellingham anymore. I'm guessing in Clinton, you may not have too many going down your Main Street either. But and this is where I am ignorant of your area, but I'm guessing there are towns around you if you do not have still a historic common in Clinton. A lot of them have gazebos, they'll have summer events, walking paths, benches, historical markers, and they're really a great place to meet other people, just to take an easy walk. They're often level because that's where the common ground was that would be chosen as a common. And don't overlook your local town commons as a great place to take an easy walk. And now we're back in your area from Gate 22. And I was so excited when Catherine shared with this picture with me, because I was there in winter and you couldn't really see how pretty the water was. You saw a lot of snow. It just looked like a massive snowfield. We parked at Gate 22, and there's an easy walk all the way down to the shoreline that offers some wonderful views. When I was there, I was wearing snowshoes, and there had been a lot of people wearing boots that punched big holes. So it was really pretty challenging to walk out there. I was really very, very grateful for my snowshoes and my hiking poles. But the parking is right off Route 140. You look for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife offices in West Boylston. And there's a substantial parking area there, probably at least 10 or 15 cars could park there. And then a trail kiosk. That's what caught my eye, was we spotted the trail kiosk from the road as we were driving. We were actually heading somewhere else. So there are a number of side trails that you can get to. There's not that many gates that you can actually legally park at, but this is one that you are quite welcome to park and be able to get out and walk along the reservoir. And it's West Boylston. We visited 40 Caves and Berlin and Clinton, there's two different entrances, and the Sudbury Valley trustees oversee this. There's actually, it's got a bit of a history where other people have, it's had other properties that have all been put together. But we ended up, because it was less crowded, going on the Berlin side of it. The Clinton side, there were cars all along the road on New Year's Day, and we chose not to. My understanding is the side on the Clinton trail is easier. It was a little iffy on the Berlin side, some real ups and downs, and some wet, a lot of wet there. And this is right down along the stream, kind of right behind where I am is where the caves, which are basically, they're just jumbled rocks with crevices that you could kind of climb into. That is where they got the 40 Caves name in this area. The trails are well marked. Some of them are quite steep on the Berlin side, and I was kind of surprised how steep they were. And it was a good thing I had a hiking buddy with me to make sure I got up and then back down, because we did want to get to see the river there. It's beautiful. So that was another point that I make in the book, is about when you're looking to avoid crowds, you often will find properties like the Sudbury Valley trustees. They're not as well known as other places like trustees of the reservation or Mass Audubon properties. And so then, yes, I'm guessing you all are very aware of the 40 Caves area, but a lot of people outside of Berlin and Clinton may not be. So places that are smaller trustees' properties, Metacomet Land Trust, the Mount Grace Land Trust out in Western Mass. These are not necessarily small, but they're not as well known by everybody in the whole state. And so you're more likely to have a chance to see places and get out on trails that are less crowded. You've got your Lester Ross Dam trails. This was a big open field that we stopped at right on, I think it was on Route 140 in Berlin, and there's a 2.1 mile loop trail, but to finish the loop from where it started, there's some parking. Seems to me it was right by some train tracks, if I'm not mistaken. But to make the 2 mile loop, you actually have to do some road walking. You don't get to have it all off-road trails. So this is the more remote. You have to walk all the way across this field. It appeared that there was a nice straight, flat trail, and we stopped and then didn't stop because there were way too many people on New Year's Day when we were in the area. But this is going to be a place that you can get some nice walks in. Did you tell me again, Catherine, that this was, did I see something about some construction happening here?
No, I'm not aware of that.
I feel like I saw a notice about something about the fountain. And I see a lot of notices on Facebook. There's a Facebook group that I run called Easy Walks, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and nearby. That is a group that when you join, you're free to share pictures, but I always ask that you tell us what the trail surfaces are like and what town it's in, that it's not just pretty pictures. People actually want to know where places are so they can go visit it too. So you're welcome to come over to Facebook and join us there. Easy Walks, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and nearby. So now the Mass Central Rail Trail goes from all the way in Weston, and I'm not Rutland. It goes quite a way, but it goes right through West Boylston along the Quinnapoxet River, which feeds into the north end of the Wachusett Reservoir. It's an absolutely wonderful rail trail. And this is rail trails by their nature are handicapped accessible. They're set up so that people in wheelchairs can appreciate them and enjoy them and access them. They're accessible for bikes, strollers, walkers. They've got some beautiful bridges, and they've done a lot of work on this rail trail all the way out to Ware from West Boylston. There are a few gaps, but I'm not sure that that's true anymore. Through Holden and then out to Ware, I'm pretty sure we were able to ride our bike all the way out to Ware, starting from West Boylston. And this is one of the views that you can get of the Quinnipiac River as it's headed to the Wachusett Reservoir. It is an absolutely stunning, stunning treasure that you have right in West Boylston. It's just amazing. What's really wonderful about this is that there are actually the rail trail on one side, and then if you park in West Boylston and go out along the little access road, it isn't actually 140, but if you are right at the north end of the reservoir, and instead of following 140 as it goes to the right, you take a left, go to the parking for the Mass Central Rail Trail, and then go right past the parking, and there's a dead-end street just past it on the other side of the river. You cross that bridge and then turn right, and it takes you up to a dead-end street that you can only walk or get your bike back there, but no cars. And you can walk along the other side of the river. It's not great for cars. The road is a little broken up. It's not in great condition, but it's got amazing views of the river. So this section of the river is just optimal for enjoying amazing, amazing views of the Quinnipiac River right in West Boylston. Let's talk a little bit about just wearing the right kind of clothes that are going to make sure you have a better enjoyable time. Boots with lug soles are a great idea. Open-toed sandals are not a great idea. You're going to get rocks in your shoes. You're going to stub your toes. You want to be able to get yourself back to your car under your own steam and not have somebody have to help you. Having bare open toes or flimsy shoes are a real risk of making it so your feet are not going to be what going to bring you back. So invest in some good hiking boots. You notice I've got those hiking socks right there. And I like to pass on this tip that I never put those hiking socks in my dryer if I can help it. Every now and then they sneak in. But every time you put socks in the dryer, that elastic that keeps the socks up are getting worn out. And you're going to be one of those people that have their socks sliding down inside their boot. And ask me how I know that. And it is not a fun thing when you've got socks down inside your boot and you have to keep stopping every 2 or 3 steps to keep pulling it back up. Don't put your socks in your dryer. Line dry. They'll dry overnight. They'll be fine. Nobody's going to be smelling your hiking boot socks. Just put them on and get going and enjoy the outdoors. Make sure you have a small pack. This is a nice one that we got from REI. That's a nice kind of fanny pack, and it carries most everything I need. You might have an old school backpack in your coat closet that hasn't gotten used or isn't getting used, or your kids have grown out of them. You don't have to spend a lot of money, but it's a really good thing to have one place to put everything so that you can either keep your hands free on the trail, or you can have both hands free to use your hiking poles for balance. You do not want to be having a shoulder purse that's flopping around and can catch on things. You don't want to be having a cell phone that's sliding around that you're worrying about. Keep them all in your backpack. Let's talk about just a few of the things you want to put in that backpack. It's a great idea to bring a sealed water bottle with fresh water. Those water bottles that you get at the store for drinking water with the little screw-on tap that's about that big, they can pop off. Don't do it. Go ahead, spend the money and get a water bottle that's going to screw on tightly so that you don't end up with everything soaked in your backpack. That's a very, very sad thing. You never know when you might need water on the trail, either to cool yourself down just because you're thirsty, or you might end up with sand or something in your eye. You're really, really grateful to have some fresh water to be able to deal with that right away and not have to be discomfort till you can get some help. You want to bring a snack for each person in your group. Homemade gorp works fine, and some people ask me what gorp is. And gorp is just peanuts, raisins, craisins, whatever, chocolate. Chocolate's always nice. Something with some protein, something with some sugar that give you some quick energy when you're out on the trail, so that when you're out and needing to head back, you're not saying, I don't ever want to do this again. Instead, stop, get a small snack, and it gives you the energy to come back and say, let's do that again. You don't have to buy granola bars. You can make your own, but bring something, because guaranteed somebody, either you or the people that you're with, are going to feel hungry when they're out on the trail. And it's nice to be able to say, not worried, I've got it covered. I tell people, especially when it's fall, heading into winter, if you leave for a hike or a walk after lunchtime, stick a headlamp in that backpack. They weigh very little. You probably aren't going to use it. Make sure the batteries work before you leave. But if the sun goes down early, if you're in a hilly area like you are around Clinton, Mount Wachusett area, the sun really gets down earlier, and you might need that headlamp. You never know, but if it's in your backpack, it's there, and you're going to have a lot better chance of getting back safely to where you started without having an injury. So this is kind of the whole package that I like to include, including a fully charged cell phone. You can't count on cell phone service, but it's a great idea. You can use your cell phone for GPS. You can use it to take pictures. You can use it to have a tracking app that can track where you are and can actually help track of where you are. If you haven't printed out a map before you went, and there's a trail kiosk with a map that you have, pull out your cell phone and take a picture of it. So you've got that map right on your phone. Everything else, you're all set. You're never all set, but don't try to overload. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the other things that you want to make sure and bring. But these are really the basics. Mount Ward in Marlborough is part of Marlborough State Forest, not terribly far from Clinton at all. It has an easy trail to the top, no view. So don't count on a view when you go to Mount Ward. It does have a very well-worn and easy walk to the top from one entrance. It also has a much more difficult approach. Ask me how, I know. The easy approach starts at the cemetery nearby. The difficult approach is very poorly marked. We almost turned around 3 or 4 times, but finally kept going, and we did find it to the top. And then we walked down the easy way and said, oh, that would have been really much easier next time. The Assabet National Wildlife Refuge is in Sudbury, Maynard. And they've got a crushed stone dust path that we rode our bike all the way around the refuge. Some really interesting things along the way, but we have a mountain bike tires, so it's not for street biking. It's not really rail trail biking, but it was okay for wider mountain bike tires. I will caution you that there are incredible amounts of mosquitoes in the summer. I saw people who were more in the know than us, who had head hats with netting that was wrapped around their face to keep the mosquitoes off of them. So mosquito spray is an absolute must once it gets to warmer weather, because there are a lot of swampy areas there. But it's really a lovely place. Some very cool World War II, I don't exactly know what you call them, but they were like receptacles. They're big, massive, I don't know, 10, 12 foot with doors that were storage areas all through the area. It used to be run by the Army, and then they turned it over to the National Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Group. Adjacent to the wildlife refuge is the Assabet River Rail Trail, and there is parking along the Assabet River Rail Trail that you can either go on the rail trail or go into the refuge. It's not the main entrance for the refuge where their visitor center is. It's on the far side where the Assabet River is. And it also offers some beautiful, beautiful views of the Assabet River Trail. It's paved with river views. It was crowded. We have found all of the rail trails during the pandemic are extremely crowded. We have done a well enough job of publicizing them that people who are new to hiking say, oh, let's go to the rail trail, because they don't realize there are other smaller trails that are also equally enjoyable that are going to be less crowded. So at least for my family, we have actually avoided using the rail trails during the pandemic because we felt that they were actually dangerously overcrowded. It was not our level of comfort, but we use rail trails to ride our tandem bike. And it's an adaptive bike so that I can actually get more than 2 miles, which is how far my feet can go, but not so good when you're riding with lots and lots of walkers, strollers, and dog walkers with long leashes on rail trails. So you really have to pay attention, keep your eye open when you're on a rail trail. Mount Pisgah is another Sudbury Valley Trustees property I wanted to make sure you knew about, in Northborough, not terribly far from Clinton, and it's got a gorgeous view. From what I have been told, and again, this was shared to me by John Ritz, and he's a hiker over in Hopkinton, who's a friend of mine, and he shared this picture and said, please, can I please use this picture, John? And he said, absolutely, of course. I think that's Wilma, is his dog there. But there are 2 trails. One that is, he said, is actually the easier path that gets you to the view. And there's another path that goes the opposite direction that is not as easy footing. So in fact, the easier path is the one that's going to get you the view. And that's looking west toward Worcester, is what we're looking at there at the Mount Pisgah Trail in Northborough. We discovered this town-owned conservation land in Southborough because it was adjacent to another very small Sudbury Valley Trustees property. We support the Sudbury Valley Trustees with our membership, and when you support them with your membership, they send you a book with 42 trails that mark their trails that are west of Boston, due west of Boston out to Worcester area. And we just went to explore this. This is an absolutely amazing old farm fields with wonderful views, but it's town owned. It's not really well known. And so we saw local people, but it was not mobs of people that were there. And you get some beautiful, beautiful views. Apple orchards. It's going to be beautiful this spring when the apple orchards start blooming. There's a lot of old trees. I don't know how well they'll bloom, but they used to. So wide trails that the town maintains. So they mow them. The rest of the open fields are not mowed. So it's really clear where you go. Not easy to get lost on a place like this. So town-owned conservation land is a great choice if you're looking to avoid crowds. Most people in other towns are not going to know where these places are, and they will, by their nature, be less crowded. Delaney Wildlife Management Area is a state-owned property in Stowe. And it's got wide flat gravel paths, and it has water views. And I caution you that in the fall, hunting is permitted on wildlife management areas. So you must wear blaze orange. It's just a practice. I keep blaze orange, couple of them, sweatshirts in my trunk all fall into the winter. Just as a matter of practice, if I'm meeting somebody and they don't have blaze orange, I hand them one of my blaze orange jackets and say, here you go, because I'm not going to go out there without you also being safe wearing blaze orange. I got it for $10 at Ocean State Job Lot. It's a minor investment in a way of being able to get out in the woods in the fall when the woods are amazing. Don't fear hunters and say, I can't go out there because there's hunters. Just understand what you need to do to make them alert to your presence and to be aware that they may be there as well. New England has cemeteries. Every town has cemeteries, and many of them are great places to find easy walks. I never catalog them or tell people, here's one you should go to, because there are, first of all, places of remembrance. Some of them are privately owned. Unless they've got a sign that says no walking at all, they're not going to mind if you stop and take an hour walk. Make sure you do not disturb other people who are there for funerals. Do not block the paths that the maintenance people are going to need or that visitors need to be able to come and access their loved ones' graves. But they're really a great option. And you know your area's cemeteries much better than I could ever imagine. And I just like to get it on people's radar to consider your local cemeteries as a great place to find easy walks. Some of the other good things to have, I've mentioned hiking poles, whether you have balance issues or bad knees. I like to put rubber tips on the bottom of my hiking poles. And that makes it so if you're on a rail trail that's paved or a smooth rock surface, they won't skitter around like those hiking poles would typically have kind of pointy metal tips, and they will not give you any traction when you come to really hard surfaces that are either paved or stone, bare stone, hard, flat stone surfaces. The problem is the rubber tips tend to fall off and you lose them when you get through mud. Ask me how I know that. So we glue the rubber tips to my hiking poles so that I don't lose them. Bring a map of the area you visit. I talked about taking pictures of the map at the trail kiosk, but if you can, print out a map before you go. And I also like to encourage people, print out a map of a nearby area as a plan B. You might find the place you wanted to go is too crowded, or you might find it doesn't allow dogs after all when you thought you could. So have a plan B in your pocket, ready to use, not just say, oh, that didn't work, we'll have to go home, but be able to have another place that you could go nearby as well. Stick some binoculars in your backpack. You never know what you might see, especially if you're going to be water views, ponds, rivers. Spring right now, we've got migrating birds on rivers and ponds all over. They are coming through every day or two. We get a new crop of migrating birds stopping at the lake where I live, and they'll be off, and then a new group will come in the next day or two beyond then. Bring your camera, or remembering that your cell phone has a camera, and just enjoy what you see. Observe close by, close up, and distances. So make sure and stick some rain gear in your backpack. You never know when a shower may occur. It's going to be light. It will also act as a windbreak if you end up in end of the day and it's getting cooler. Nice to have that rain gear that you can just pull out and give you an extra layer of protection. In colder weather, you're going to want to stick some extra clothes in your backpack. A good reason to use that backpack that is still stuck in your coat closet. You can stick an extra long sleeve shirt or an extra fleece jacket, and then blaze orange clothing in hunting season. If you go to Rhode Island, it is the law that you have to have at least 500 square inches of orange on your body. Typically, front vest and back of the vest will give you about 500 inches. A blaze orange hat is not enough. And then individual must-haves, I remind people, if you have medications, like if you've been prescribed medications like an EpiPen or an asthma inhaler, do not leave that in your car. Bring them with you. If you stepped on a ground wasp nest and needed that EpiPen, you will not have time to get back to your car to access that life-saving medication. Put it in your backpack, but also tell the person you're hiking with where that emergency medication is. You do not want that other poor person rifling through your backpack, desperately trying to find life-saving medicine for you when they don't know where it is. You might say it's none of their business, but when you're on the trail, it is everybody's business to keep everybody safe and bring everybody back safely. If you've got a trip leader, tell that trip leader where that emergency medication is. Make sure they know so that they can keep an eye on it. And then, of course, we're still in the pandemic, though we are getting more vaccinations. We're not done yet, and the rates of infection are going back up. I've had people tell me it's the outdoors, I don't need a face mask. But there are trails when you cannot avoid, you cannot stay 6 feet away from another person. It is a kindness, it is a courtesy to have a face mask ready to use when you see other people, just as a matter of personal courtesy. Pull it up, give people a little bit of reassurance that you're not going to make them sick, and then go on by, slide it back down, you're fine, you're outdoors, but when you see other people, have that face mask ready, and it's simply responsible. We're going to get all through this, but it's been a long year for all of us. If you're out on the trail, you want to make sure you know what poison ivy looks like. Educate yourself. Here is one of the lovely, lovely samples of poison ivy that I have come across as I was at the Blackstone Canal in Uxbridge, and it has beautiful foliage in the fall. Absolutely stunning colors. My cat is just visiting us too. But get on the internet. There are multiple pictures that you can study ask people who you're with to help you understand what poison ivy looks like, and because it does come in different forms, including if you see a hairy root like this going up a tree, that is poison ivy. It's those hairy, furry roots, and those hairy roots are just as nasty and noxious and will make you just as miserable as the rest of the plant. If you see signs like this one, or signs that say, this is an easement, stay on the trail, please read and follow what the sign tells you. Believe the person who put that sign there, that there's a reason. When we have easements over private property and people ignore them, that's how easements get taken away. And the private property owner says, nope, you're not going this way anymore because you're not respecting what the sign said. So when you see signs, take a moment, read it, see if you can make sure you understand what the sign says, and then try to follow the directions as best as you can understand. And this was my friend Kate McLeod's picture. It was out in Hawaii, and I just said, Kate, I have to use this picture, and she gave me her permission for that. And so here I am on a little trail in Blackstone, and I've got my rain gear, I've got my layered clothing. You notice I've got rain gear, a sweater, I've got a long sleeve shirt on underneath, I got light colored pants that are tucked into my hiking socks. This is for tick prevention. Ticks like to move up. They typically are in grasses and brushy areas when you start bushwhacking. If you stay on a real clear trail, you're going to be less likely, but they're still out there. So tuck your pants into the socks. It makes it much more difficult for the ticks to find something that they're looking for, which is skin. They are looking to latch on wherever they possibly can. I've got my hiking poles, and I've got a face mask, and I'm at a little Metacomet Land Trust property, which again, these are smaller land trusts. You're not going to see many people, and you're more likely to be able to avoid crowds that way. Just a quick photo tip. When you're trying to capture foliage, or even in the winter when there's no foliage, don't forget, besides looking around and looking down and looking at close things, don't forget to look up, because then you get some amazing views. Just the sky looks different. We had this beautiful blue sky day and this little bit of color in the foliage, and I just was really, really glad that I looked up and didn't forget to do that. So I've got these three trail books. They're not very close to where you all are. So if you're going to South Central Massachusetts, this has got over 130 trails in these three books. And if you're not going there, that's not going to be as much help to you. But I welcome you to every single town that you're in is on the front cover. You can look on Amazon, Google my name and Amazon. All of these books are listed. You can see which towns they are. You can look inside the book. They all have a same format. They tell you a map, how to get to the trailhead, search terms to find a trail map, a picture, whether dogs are welcome, whether it's handicapped accessible, and something of interest along the way that you'll find at every single one of these. And yes, I've walked them all. So it's really been, as some of my friends, when I say, well, it's kind of an obsession, and they say, no, not kind of, that it really has become something that I can't get enough of, and that's okay. And then the latest, finding easy walks wherever you are, which is really kind of a, how did we do this? Which has also helped me to quantify what are easy walks. Remember, there are not too many roots, not too many rocks, relatively level with something of interest along the way. And so there's a chapter on what easy walks are. There's a chapter on different types of places to look, whether it's cemeteries or whether it's arboretums or whether it's national parks, state parks, town-owned properties, a whole list of possible places, Army Corps of Engineers properties. And then there's a chapter on going on group walks, things that you need to tell a group leader if you have special needs, things that a group leader needs to be aware of if he's got people with special needs. And then even a chapter on for trail builders and trail maintainers, for how to make trails more welcoming for people who need easy walks. Whether you're older, whether you're a young parent with a stroller, or whether you are someone with physical mobility needs or other special needs of various kinds. It's all in one book. Your library in Clinton has it. Thank you so much for inviting me. And Catherine, I hope you put your contact information in the chat and we can come back and see if there are any questions.
So actually we did, Marjorie, get a couple of really great questions. And as Marjorie already pointed out, her book, Finding Easy Walks Wherever You Are, is currently, thank you. She gave us a copy. It's currently in the Clinton Library. Feel free to go on to the CW Mars website, check it out, and we can get it to you through our curbside pickup. Or the library is currently open to the general public. So feel free to come to the back door, come in and visit with us. Anyway, that being said, a couple of really great questions came into the chat line. The first one being, what kind of socks do you recommend, wool or cotton?
You're supposed to wear wool, and I am allergic to wool. So every time I put on my cotton socks, my husband shakes his head and says, your feet are going to be cold. And my feet would be burning if I let cotton near my skin. And so wool keeps your feet warmer if you can possibly tolerate it. There are some wool blends that you might be able to tolerate, and those are all more advisable than cotton. And I think the ones that I have now are actually a synthetic rather than cotton, because cotton is so not so good. But the synthetic blends are actually pretty good. They're not going to keep your feet as warm as wool.
Then a question from me, actually. You mentioned, because I like to walk with the dog, you mentioned making sure before you go out and in your book, you have some great recommendations for walking with your dogs, which is, once again, just—
Oh yes, there is a whole chapter.
Be common sense and be kind to others, make sure the dog is under control, blah, blah, blah. But how do you find out if dogs are welcome on the trail you want to go on?
A lot of times you just have to go and look for the signs. And and that's part of many town-owned properties, they will have a policy. You can always call your conservation office or your town hall and find out if they have a town policy. Your recreation department will be able to tell you. Typically, Catherine, and please correct me if I'm wrong, DCR pretty much their dogs are welcome unless it's specifically posted. Am I wrong about that?
So DCR state parks generally will allow dogs. Water
On leash.
supply, on leash, yes, absolutely on leash. Water supply protection lands where around the Wachusett Reservoir and Quabbin Reservoir, no dogs allowed. So
now, I'm thinking of the Mass Central Rail Trail because people bring dogs. I believe that's a different category.
Yes, so I'm glad you brought that up because it can be confusing. The entrance at West Boylston on the rail trail is owned by the town. So they have made the decision dogs are allowed on their section of trail. But once you get on that trail, and this is good information to have when you have your dog on a leash, once you get on that trail, you go into where the I-90 overpass is. and now it's no longer town land, it's water supply protection land, and dogs are not allowed beyond that.
There was a section, I think in the Holden parking lot, that said no dogs in this section.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it gets pretty tricky. General rule, if it's watershed lands, no dogs. Most state parks will allow dogs on leash unless it's specifically like a nature preserve, or for some reason really delicate ecosystem like Walden Pond. I believe they don't allow dogs.
Trustees of reservation typically limit 2 dogs per person, and there are a very few that have even no leash required on some trustees' sections of properties, and that you really have to go to websites and check. Mass Audubon trails, typically no dogs ever. There might be some that allow dogs, but as far as I know, almost without exception, if it's a Mass Audubon trail, your dog is not welcome. So for those of us who, when I encounter a dog and a dog jumps on me, I am going to get injured. So I am not overly enthusiastic about having dogs be real friendly to me because I could get injured. So for people who have serious fear or discomfort around dogs, Mass Audubon properties are actually a really good option for you. You have a better guarantee that that policy is going to be enforced, especially where there are visitor centers. And again, if you're going to be going to these places regularly, support the organization that oversees these properties. It's typically $60, $70 membership per year. A lot of times, like with Mass Audubon, it gives you either free or discounted entry to any of their guided walks or other events. Same with trustees of the reservation properties, Sudbury Valley trustees. You have to pick and choose where you're going to be spending your time. But I encourage people to consider, if you love the outdoors and you appreciate it, consider supporting the organizations that help make these open space for us possible.
So much of what you said tonight, wonderful, wonderful information. A lot of it is common sense. Thanks very much for pointing out the idea that if you're getting around water, yeah, your dog's not going to be necessarily welcome there. Also, the idea about Audubon property, once again, common sense, wonderful, wonderful. So thanks for that. One of the questions that came through, I don't know if you saw this, but it said somebody was wondering what if you could state the cost of your books and where.
Sure. On Amazon, the books are the Finding Easy Walks is $18, and I believe the Easy Walks in Massachusetts and More Easy Walks are both $21.95, and the Easy Walks and Paddles in the 10 Mile River watershed, which is down toward the Attleboroughs area, that I believe is a $20. So.
And then also for those of you who are looking at the chat line, or maybe you don't have access to it, but Catherine Parent gave us her email address, which is, if you can see her name there on the screen, Catherine k.parent@mass.gov. And for more online information, you can go to www.mass.gov/info-details, Wachusett Reservoir-watershed-education-programs. Yes, I said all that in one. It did not lose breath. You know.
I see a question asking where you buy the rubber tips, and of course it's the internet. And a lot of times they will come with a hiking poles, but not always. And people ask me about specific brands. You're going to do well if you haven't ever used them, to go to REI in Framingham or some other outdoor store if you've got something closer, and ask if they have some that you can try, because you want to typically have them set at a height so that your arms and elbows bent make about a straight L, so that your forearm is going straight level with the ground. So you're not going to be tipped up, you're not going to be tipped down, but right level with the ground. And that's really where you, for hiking poles, where you're going to be best able. They're collapsible, so they really are going to, you should be able to fit them to your height. The more important I find is the handles, because if you have any kind of balance issues, you're going to be leaning on them. And my left hand tends to go numb just from leaning on it. And that's part of why those straps are there. You can find videos online for how to properly use the straps for hiking poles, where you come from underneath where the strap is, pull your hand down, and then come down onto your handle. And that takes some of the weight of when you're holding the pole, the strap takes some of that weight, so your hand isn't taking all of that weight when you're using the hiking pole.
Once again, great practical advice. So one more question, and this one is actually from me. You mentioned a headlamp, and I was looking into headlamps for like hiking later especially in the wintertime, where you want to get outside, and by the time you're out of work, it's dark, right? Would you recommend what kind of headlamp would you recommend? And do you recommend a rechargeable or a battery one?
Rechargeable batteries are better than they used to be. You want to make sure that the battery is going to hold. Sometimes just those cheaper ones that you can get at Home Depot that are inexpensive. You can spend a lot of money on headlamps that really isn't necessary. You might be better off not with all the fancy schmancy stuff. You just want it to turn off and turn on. And
Absolutely.
You don't necessarily need all the fancy red lights and all the flashing lights. And so you might do best just to buy something that's got disposable batteries that you can get from Home Depot or your local hardware store.
So thank you so much. And for those of you who maybe tuned in a little on the late side, or missed me giving the intro, we are recording this tonight. It will be posted, and Marjorie, bless her, and Catherine, hopefully this feels the same. Marjorie's giving us permission, and most
Absolutely.
we take them down after a certain amount of time, but Marjorie's allowed us to keep them up. So if you are interested, if you heard something tonight and you want to go back and review, especially with Marjorie and Catherine's contact information, just go to the Bigelow's YouTube channel. So if you Google Bigelow Library YouTube, you will find our YouTube channel. Or go to the Bigelow's Facebook page, same deal. You Google Bigelow Library Facebook, it'll pull it up, and you will find the videos. By the end of the week, I will get them recorded and posted there. So do yourself a huge favor, continue to support your libraries. There's still a lot of wonderful stuff going on. Do yourself an even bigger favor, get outside and do some walking. This is such beautiful weather, and New England really is a charming place.
It really is. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you, Catherine, for adding so much value to this presentation. And I encourage you, get acquainted with your DCR staff wherever you get the opportunity. Stop and say hello, ask questions. They're really lovely and very friendly people. I am so grateful that Catherine and I befriended each other. We've had some amazing positive experiences, and it all started with a conversation.
That's fantastic. And once again, as I mentioned it earlier on, the library has museum passes, and we actually have museum passes to the Mass State Park system and to the Trustees Go parks too. So if you do happen to go to some place where they might possibly be charging, or you want information about parks in the area, feel free to contact the library. We can give you that information, all of those passes as well too.
Oh, thank you so much.
And thank you. And Marjorie, it was really, really a pleasure, and I will definitely have you back.
Thank you. I would be delighted.
Thank you.
Care.
Good night.
Right. Good night. Bye-bye, Catherine.
Bye. Good to see you, Marjorie.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.